the mysterious West Mountain base finally made its move. As Wu Chenyu and others were quietly waiting at the cave entrance, suddenly, a strange noise came from outside, and Wu Chenyu became incredibly excited, scrambling out of the cave entrance while excitedly shouting, "My dad has finally sent someone." The other students also got up and hurriedly followed, as if afraid of being left behind. Liang Yu, with Shinyaoka's support, also slowly walked out of the snow cave to see a long dog sled just stopping. These dogs were clearly extraordinary, resembling well-trained military dogs. At that moment, Liang Yu immediately noticed something amiss. 7 or 8 soldiers, wearing special uniforms and exuding an exceptionally strong presence, indicating they were seasoned and elite veterans, disembarked. Instead of approaching them directly, the soldiers talked among themselves, eyeing the group of students as if inspecting animals. An excited Wu Chenyu approached and asked, "Did my father send you to pick me up?" One among the crowd lifted his helmet to reveal a somewhat haggard face and excitedly said, "Little Yu, I'm here." Wu Chenyu was initially in disbelief, taking a few seconds to vaguely recognize, "Is this really my dear dad?" It wasn't his fault for not recognizing him immediately. His father, as a top official in Heavenly Sea City, usually had an appearance of prosperity, while this man before him had become almost unrecognizably thin. Wu Chenyu, confused but still overjoyed, embraced his father and said, "Dad, you finally came. Do you know what I've been through these past 2 months?" Expressing some resentment, Wu Chenyu pushed his father away, angrily shouting, "Why didn't you come to pick me up sooner? Do you know I almost died here?" Wu Jiangwo looked cowardly and embarrassed, saying, "Let's not talk about that now. The important thing is you're safe. Let's go home with Dad first." At this moment, a soldier approached with a condescending tone, asking, "We heard your school warehouse has quite a few supplies. Please lead the way. These supplies must be taken back to the base." It was only then that Liang Yu realized something was amiss. These people don't seem like they're here to rescue us. They seem only interested in the supplies. Wu Chenyu, in a feigned diligent manner, said, "There are indeed many supplies under the snow, but there's also a mutated big cat inside. We are no match for it." The soldiers discussed among themselves for a while, and the captain declared, "No big deal about a monster. We have experience dealing with mutated creatures. Just lead the way, and you can leave the rest to us." Wu Chenyu panicked at this. He had no desire to return to that perilous snow cave, certain these soldiers couldn't ensure his safety. Thinking this, Wu Chenyu pointed at Liang Yu and said, "All the supplies for us students were found by teacher Liang. She knows the location of the supplies better." In a bid for his safety, Wu Chenyu did not hesitate to betray Liang Yu. Liang Yu sighed deeply and took the initiative, saying, "I'll lead you there then." Soon, the soldiers followed her towards the cave entrance. The anxious students asked, "Can we go back first?" But a soldier coldly rebuked, "Just stay put. Once we find the supplies, arrangements will be made for you." Sensing a subtle shift in the atmosphere, the students grew uneasy. Not long after, sounds echoed from the cave entrance, and a soldier popped his head out, shouting, "You boys, come over and help carry some things." The boys had no choice but to comply. The soldiers then directed the students to load all the found supplies onto the sleds. Some students began to whisper complaints. "Weren't they supposed to rescue us? Why does it feel like we're being used as labor now?" The students, daring not to speak out loud, quietly complained to class leader Wu Chenyu, "Didn't you say your father was a leader? Why are we doing this hard labor?" Wu Chenyu, equally embarrassed, had always bragged about his father being the top person at West Mountain Base. But given the current situation, it seemed his father's position within the West Mountain organization wasn't that high after all. He quietly explained, "It must be due to a shortage of manpower. In an icebound apocalypse, there won't be any extra hands. We can rest once we get to the base." Soon, all the packed supplies were moved onto the sled, and the soldiers quickly set off with the fully loaded sleds, leaving behind 2 soldiers who waved at Liang Yu and the students, saying, "Let's go." Watching the sleds disappear into the distance, the students were dumbfounded. "Is there no other sled arranged for us? Do we have to walk there?" These were kids used to comfort and luxury. The West Mountain base was at least a dozen kilometers away. One girl immediately protested, "We've been starving and suffering for so long. How can we possibly walk that far?" Listening to the students' back and forth protests, the 2 soldiers were filled with scorn. "Shut the hell up." One of the soldiers suddenly bellowed, his military authority and aura of decisiveness instantly subduing the students. "Follow me if you don't want to die, or else crawl back to the cave," he said before turning away impatiently. The other soldier coldly added, "Let me remind you, no matter if you were children of high officials or wealthy tycoons before, it's all worthless now in the apocalypse. If you want to survive, just obey." After dropping a bag of energy bars, he turned and left. Some students were instantly devastated, clearly unable to accept this harsh reality. Liang Yu picked up the energy bars and encouraged, "Let's gather our spirits and follow them. The school's food has been taken away. Staying here means certain death. West Mountain Base is our only hope for survival." Teacher Liang as their moral support, a glimmer of hope began to kindle in everyone's hearts. Thus, the students proceeded, supporting each other, consuming an energy bar when they couldn't go on. 2 hours later, they finally reached the entrance of West Mountain Base, a giant iron door slowly opening. Guided by the 2 soldiers, the students hurriedly entered. Seeing this place base as a safe haven and a hope for a better life. Descending along the staircase, Lian Yu and the others didn't know how long they walked until they reached a spacious room, much warmer than outside. Both excited and scared, the students wondered, what are we going to do next? Lian Yu reassured them, don't worry, they wouldn't have brought us all the way here to harm us. Just then, a door opened, and a group of people in protective suits, carrying devices resembling pesticide sprayers, emerged and began to spray the students vigorously. Following them, a formidable middle-aged woman stepped forward, cleared her throat, and commanded loudly, everyone, line up. We are disinfecting you as a precaution. A full body check will follow. For the safety of everyone in the base, please cooperate fully. Following that, 2 medical staff arrived at the scene. Under the orders of the stout woman, everyone had their blood samples taken for testing. Then, under the guidance of the soldiers, they were led into a room. After the arduous trek through miles of snow, everyone was exhausted. The soldiers, menacing with their weapons, commanded obedience without question, and no one had the energy or courage to speak up. Lian Yu and the students found themselves confined in a spacious room. Soon, a person in protective clothing brought in a large basin of food. The students exchanged wary glances. This white, viscous liquid, what is it? It smells decent though. Driven by hunger, they grabbed spoons and began to eat ravenously. It tastes a bit like yogurt, but it's definitely not yogurt. Just as they had replenished some of their strength, the door suddenly opened, and Wu Jiangwo, accompanied by the stout woman, entered. Wu Qingyu, upon seeing his father, excitedly called out to him. The stout woman glanced at Wu Qingyu, a sinister smile crossing her face. She turned to Wu Jiangwo and remarked, is this young fellow your son? He looks robust. Wu Jiangwo replied obsequiously, yes, Director Su. Director Su then announced loudly with her hands behind her back, the blood sample tests are back. Everyone is healthy, no infectious diseases or suspicious viruses. Indeed, college students have good resistance, but everyone still needs to undergo a thorough cleansing, after which you will be assigned to the 4th survival pod. As the staff directed, everyone lined up for the deep cleaning. At that moment, Director Su pointed at Wu Qingyu and said, you, come with me. Wu Qingyu's eyes lit up, and he began boasting to his classmates, I told you my father has a significant position here. He'll make sure I'm well taken care of. I'm not like the rest of you. The classmates looked at him with envy. Wu Jiangwo then whispered in his ear, little you, these are extraordinary times. You must abide by the rules here. You cannot refuse what the leaders ask of you. Remember that. Wu Qingyu nodded, somewhat puzzled, thinking he might be assigned to some important position. Then, Director Su warmly put an arm around Wu Qingyu's shoulder, saying, Wu Qingyu, right? Come with me. Watching Wu Qingyu receive special treatment, everyone else was filled with envy. Wu Qingyu followed Director Su through the shelter, marveling at the vastness of West Mountain Base. The temperature underground was much warmer, around 6 or 7 degrees Celsius, a stark contrast to the outside cold. Soldiers in white uniforms guarded every door, making the place seem extremely solemn and secure. Director Su led Wu Qingyu to a room and directed him to the bathroom. Go take a shower. Wu Qingyu, not having bathed for 2 months, didn't think twice. Excited for a hot shower, he rushed into the bathroom and indulged for a full half-hour. However, upon emerging from the bathroom, wrapped only in a towel, he was stunned. The room was bathed in a suggestive pink light, and Director Su was dressed in a scanty outfit, her eyes filled with seductive intent. Before Wu Qingyu could react, she pulled him close. What are you waiting for? Come here. After the encounter, Director Su, seemingly satisfied, dressed and left the room. Wu Jiangwo had been waiting outside the whole time. As Director Su exited, he approached obsequiously. Director Su, was my son to your satisfaction? She gave a thumbs up. He's definitely the son of Director Wu. I'm quite pleased with his talents. Did he inherit them from you? Wu Jiangwo responded with a foolish smile. Please, don't call me director anymore. Those days are behind me. Director Su commanded, clean up the tissues and such inside. I'll arrange for extra supplies to be issued to you. Wu Jiangwo was overjoyed, bowing deeply in gratitude. Thank you for your generosity, Director Su. Call on me anytime you need, and I'll bring my son right over to serve you. Meanwhile, Lian Yu and the other students had just completed their deep cleaning and were dressed in new clothes, which they found quite unfashionable. These styles and colors are so outdated, they complained. Just then, a leader-like woman with glasses entered. Everyone, follow me. I'll take you to where you'll be working and living. Behind the woman with glasses stood 2 armed soldiers, casting a gloomy aura over everyone. The students, lined up and following the leader, felt a growing sense of unease. Deep underground, under the dim lighting guarded by armed soldiers, a palpable sense of oppression made it hard for them to breathe. They huddled together, looking to Lian Yu for guidance. As a large iron door rose, they were presented with a massive workspace filled with bicycles. To their astonishment, inside were thousands of people pedaling vigorously. Every face was empty, numb, and exhausted, yet no one dared to stop. A privileged young lady, stunned, asked, what are these people doing? The woman with glasses glanced over her shoulder and explained, this is your workplace. Your job will be to generate electricity for the base. These bicycles are connected to the power system. You will each receive a manual of the base's regulations, which you must adhere to strictly or face severe consequences. Her expression was ice cold, not impatient, but terrifying enough to chill one's bones. bones. You better work hard. Your ration is linked to the amount of electricity you generate. If you want to survive, don't slack off. Suddenly, a girl collapsed to the ground, crying bitterly, clutching at teacher Liang's hand, repeatedly calling out to her. All the girls began to cry, their tears flowing freely. Accustomed to a life of luxury, these young women had never experienced such hardship and instinctively looked to their only teacher for hope. They reminisced about the better days at Azure Sky Academy, where teacher Liang had taken care of everything, protecting them and finding food. Now, the environment was akin to the sweatshops of old societies. The female leader was indifferent to their crying. Save your pity party. I advise you to conserve your energy for generating power. Otherwise, I guarantee you won't even have the energy to cry. Liang Yu comforted the students, saying, even though I have special abilities, with these armed soldiers right next to us, I dare not revolt. Liang Yu then realized this place is no longer the so-called official refuge. It has become a tool for some power organization. We students can't get proper placement. It seems my previous thoughts were too naive. Elsewhere, after Director Su closed the door and left, Wu Jiangwo rushed into the room, concerned for his son. Wu Qinyu lay on the bed, exhausted, his eyes no longer focused. Wu Jiangwo looked at his son with a pained expression and said, "Little Yu, are you alright?" He then sighed deeply. The rules of the game are like this now. If you want to survive standing, you must be prepared to accept everything lying down. You'll get used to it eventually. Wu Qinyu, tears streaming down his face, looked at his father and asked, "How could it turn out like this? Aren't you the chief? Why didn't you tell me about the situation here earlier?" Wu Qinyu thought that coming here, he could continue living as a privileged second-generation official. Wu Jiangwo, with a heavy voice, said, "After the apocalypse, all the rules changed. The so-called chief position is now worthless." He then began to recount what had happened since the apocalypse. Initially, the people who came to the base were from the top of the pyramid and Heavenly Sea City. Everyone respected each other, and researchers speculated that the snow disaster would end soon, and everyone could return to their positions, restoring their former status and cooperation. But soon, scientists discovered that the effects of the supernova explosion were far beyond anyone's expectations. The Earth had entered an ice age, which might not end for decades or even centuries. This meant that the past status and identity would cease to exist. At that moment, a group of people awakened powerful special abilities, widening the class gap. Those in control of armed forces rebelled and seized control of West Mountain Base, eventually imposing a hierarchy. Wu Jiangwo continued gravely, "Wherever there are humans, there will be hierarchies. What happened to you today is the first lesson of your life and death struggle in the future. Now, we are at the bottom, so we must unconditionally submit to the rulers. To survive, these sacrifices are actually nothing." Meanwhile, Liang Yu and her students had a busy day and finally got some rest. Only now did they start to grasp the full extent of their situation. After pedaling bicycles for an entire day, they were rewarded with only a bowl of some protein paste-like food. The students, accustomed to a life of luxury, couldn't adapt to the intense labor and oppressive environment. They gathered around teacher Liang, lamenting, "We've pedaled all day and our backsides are sore. When will this end? I'd rather die than continue like this." Seeing her students in such agony, Liang Yu felt deeply pained but was at a loss for what to do. Under these circumstances, just being alive is already quite difficult. Look at those pedaling with us. All were once people of status. A world where everyone is happy and enjoys life simply doesn't exist. But don't be too pessimistic. At least you are alive and able to fend for yourselves. Liang Yu had come to accept this way of life and even found it less burdensome than before. Previously, she had to care for all the students while constantly guarding against attacks from supernatural beings. One of the students, filled with indignation, declared, "We are the elite of society. Why should we work like slaves for them?" Teacher Liang, with a look of helplessness, realized that the students still couldn't grasp their new reality. "I'm just a teacher. What can I do? Any random person from the power station was a director or leader before. I have no say here." At that moment, the door suddenly opened, and Wu Qinyu walked in, looking dispirited. Everyone quickly surrounded him, asking, "Your dad is a leader at the base. Can he look out for us? We don't want to pedal the bicycles anymore. Even clerical work would be better." Wu Qinyu, looking grim, responded, "Don't be delusional. Everyone at the base has a specific role, and your task is to generate power." Teacher Liang approached and asked, "Wu Qinyu, what have you done today?" Clenching his fists, Wu Qinyu was haunted by the humiliating events of the day. "Today, I got a better understanding of the base's current situation with my father. Our position is quite dangerous now." Wu Qinyu, disheartened, shared the current state of the base with Liang Yu. "Teacher Liang, we will have to rely on you from now on." Liang Yu, after some thought, seemed to understand Wu Qinyu's implication. Being a martial arts expert and now awakened with special abilities, she knew it was only a matter of time before she became important in the current hierarchy of the base. Wu Qinyu then relayed the intelligence he had gathered. The leader of the West Mountain organization is Chen Xinyan, a former high-ranking official controlling the armed forces of Heavenly Sea City. Many of his subordinates have awakened special abilities and quickly took control of the entire base, restructuring its order. To manage the organization more effectively, Chen Xinyan divided the base into 4 tiers of living capsules. The first tier houses is Chen Xinyan and his relatives, enjoying the best living conditions. The second tier is mostly top scientists and medical professionals whose living conditions are comparable to pre-apocalypse standards. The third tier houses the armed forces, originally the elite warriors of Heavenly Sea City, now including powerful squads with special abilities, living in a relatively carefree state. The bottom tier is where we are, the fourth tier, making up the majority of the West Mountain organization, doing the hardest work yet receiving the least resources. We have no way out, closely monitored by the guard team from the third tier. Any act of defiance is tantamount to suicide. The students were stunned by the revelation. One girl, overcome with despair, cried out, "Does this mean we are trapped here for life? What's the point of living then?" Wu Qingyu coldly responded, "They agreed to bring us here to replenish their labor force. If you want to end it all, no one will stop you. They don't care about our lives. They can easily replace us with more survivors from outside." At this moment, a tall male student angrily grabbed Wu Qingyu's collar, accusing him, "Isn't this all your fault? You exposed our location, leading to our resources being stolen and us being captured to this hellish place to toil." Wu Qingyu, with an impassive expression, simply stared back at him. "Do you think staying at Azure Sky Academy would have spared you from being devoured by the cat demons?" The boy was left speechless. Wu Qingyu pushed him away forcefully, then turned to Liang Yu and said, "Our only hope now is Teacher Liang. You're different from us. You're a special ability user. At West Mountain Base, ability users enjoy privileges. So, Teacher Liang, you must help us." Wu Qingyu's words awakened the students, who quickly surrounded Liang Yu, pleading in a flurry, "Teacher Liang, you are our teacher. Looking after students is your responsibility. We can't handle hard labor. If this continues, we'll go insane." Liang Yu, looking helpless, replied, "I will ensure your safety, but I'm afraid I can't do much about the division of labor in the base." After a day's rest, her physical strength had mostly recovered. With her current combat ability, she could easily defeat armed soldiers, but she wouldn't lose her reason over it. She even thought that the order of the base was reasonable. Then, she turned and lay on her bed, saying, "Everyone, rest up. We still have to get up and work tomorrow, or we'll be drained." Reluctantly, the students returned to their beds. Liang Yu felt a bit sorry for them and was willing to try changing the situation if there was a chance. The next morning, the dormitory's loudspeaker went off promptly, and everyone hurriedly prepared, then lined up for the cafeteria. The woman with glasses, accompanied by a few soldiers, took a megaphone and shouted, "Good morning, everyone. We've survived another day. Let us thank our great leader, Chen Xinyan, for living happily until now." Everyone excitedly cheered, "Long live leader Chen Xinyan." Even Liang Yu's students couldn't help but join in the chant, making her scalp tingle. "This is brainwashing," she thought. The woman with glasses continued through the megaphone. "Yesterday, the base rescued another group of survivors. Now we're all one big family. Now, let's have our new family members introduce themselves. Welcome." Everyone's eyes turned to Liang Yu and the others, starting to applaud warmly. Liang Yu felt a cold sweat, familiar with this type of brainwashing. This is the famous herd effect. Don't think that just being vigilant will prevent assimilation. Once you integrate into the collective, you'll slowly identify with everyone and everything around you, eventually being unable to extricate yourself. This is why so many intelligent college students fall into scams they once looked down upon. Liang Yu took a deep breath. Although she understood the situation well, she felt helpless and could only lead her students to introduce themselves one by one. The woman with glasses then arranged a morning meeting, starting with a grand chorus of praising the organization, followed by a few enjoyable games. Throughout the morning meeting, Liang Yu noticed subtle changes in her students' expressions. They seemed to be slowly accepting this new group, even starting to chat with the workers they met during the games. Liang Yu found a bittersweet comfort in this, thinking, living in such oblivion is better than waiting for death at Azure Sky Academy. At that moment, a young woman in a black suit, followed by two armed soldiers, entered. The woman with glasses immediately approached her with a flattering demeanor. "Secretary Gu, what an honor to have you here. There's no need for you to come to such a place personally. Just send a message, and I'll take care of it for you." Secretary Gu didn't even give the woman a glance, took the megaphone, and announced loudly, "We rescued a new group of survivors yesterday. Is Miss Liang Yu here?" Liang Yu stood up calmly. "I am Liang Yu." Hearing their teacher's name, the students looked towards her with eyes full of hope. Liang Yu walked over slowly. Secretary Gu approached and shook hands with Liang Yu, introducing herself. "I am Guro, the secretary of leader Chen Xinyan. Our leader would like to meet you." As soon as these words were said, the entire cafeteria erupted into commotion. Everyone started discussing wildly. The leader of the West Mountain organization actually wants to meet a newcomer, and even send a personal secretary to deliver the message. Isn't this treatment a fast track to soaring high? The students were especially thrilled, urging, "Teacher Liang, please don't forget about us." Amidst the noisy discussions, Secretary Go looked up slightly. Her gaze was stern, and the cafeteria fell silent instantly. She then smiled at Liang Yu and said, "Miss Liang, please follow me." Liang Yu was curious about who Chen Xinyan really was, but she knew any opportunity to leave the power plant was a good one. Led by Guro, she quickly arrived at Chen Xinyan's office, where she met a kind-faced, middle-aged man, about 50 years old. As soon as he saw Liang Yu, he walked over over with a smile and took her hand, showering her with compliments. Miss Liang is such a responsible and great teacher, leading so many students to survive through such hardships. It's truly admirable. Liang Yu was somewhat overwhelmed by this sudden warmth and didn't quite understand the situation before Chen Xinyan, still holding her arm, invited her to sit and expressed his desire to seek her advice. His gentle and kind demeanor made Liang Yu feel a sense of warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. After a round of comprehensive compliments, Chen Xinyan shared with Liang Yu his vision for West Mountain Base, including its planned 4-tier life pod structure. Gradually gaining her approval, Chen Xinyan then earnestly said to Liang Yu, "I hope to leverage your strength to maintain this base and preserve the spark of human civilization." Upon hearing this, Liang Yu immediately felt the nobility of Chen Xinyan's intentions and readily agreed. "For the future of humanity, I will not shirk from any place where I can be of use." Chen Xinyan's smile deepened, and he called Secretary Garo and indirectly arranged for Liang Yu to be placed in the second life pod, a structure akin to a high-end office building with spacious corridors and bright lighting, almost making one forget it was hundreds of meters underground. Liang Yu felt she had made the right decision, though the students laboring away on the bicycles generating electricity seemed to have slipped from her mind. Meanwhile, at Lark Manor, Zhang Yi's main task during this period had been feeding the cat. That day, he prepared premium cat treats and even a fresh, golden fish, pleading gently with Flower, "I've been feeding you for a week now. Be my pet, will you? If you agree to come back with me, I'll make sure you're fed well every day." After Flower quickly finished the food, Zhang Yi continued to coax, "My place is very warm, you know. There's a cozy fireplace to sit by. Why suffer in the cold outdoors?" Flower also looked through the French window into the house, observing the warm and comfortable scene inside. For the first time, it showed a hesitant expression. Zhang Yi noticed the change in its eyes and felt hopeful, so he stood up and slowly walked towards the main door. Sure enough, Flower cautiously followed. At that moment, Zhang Yi was as gentle as an old father, step by step trying to lure it inside. Flower indeed followed him into the house. Zhang Yi was ecstatic inside. Once Flower entered the house, it began to wreak havoc without restraint, jumping and scratching everywhere. It even tore at the $1,000,000 sofa, but Zhang Yi watched with a smile, even encouragingly saying, "Go ahead and make yourself at home. This is your home now." Meanwhile, Zhou Kir jealously remarked, "It's a good thing this cat can't turn into a woman, or I'd have no status at home at all." Fresh into the shelter, Flower was filled with curiosity, causing trouble all day long. Zhang Yi was extremely tolerant, letting it leave footprints everywhere and even not minding when it smashed a $1,000,000 antique vase. It wasn't until Flower, tired from playing, curled up on the chair to rest that Zhang Yi finally breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that building initial trust was most important when dealing with cats. Once that process fails, it's hard to make up for it later. Zhang Yi took a deep breath, thinking, "I've never been this tired even when I was groveling in the past." Then he tried to reach out to pet Flower, but before he could touch it, Flower turned around and yelped, "Alert!" They awkwardly made eye contact for 2 seconds before Flower finally lowered its guard and settled down. Zhang Yi took another deep breath, contentedly succeeding in petting Flower. Flower let out a comfortable purr, finally acknowledging Zhang Yi as its owner. Zhang Yi was completely relieved, thinking, "I've never been this tired even when groveling to Fan Yuqing before." Gaining Flower's trust brought indescribable joy to Zhang Yi. After Flower joined the big family, the shelter was filled with a new kind of happiness. The girls competed to pet the cat daily. Yang Mi even took it with her during her showers. Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen even let it sleep between them. During this time, Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen were not idle either. With Yang Xinxin maintaining the shelter's cybersecurity, no one in the world dared to breach it. And as a top hacker, Yang Xinxin was not satisfied with just defense. She used her powerful hacking skills to initiate counter-invasions along the trails of any attempted breaches. After discovering important information, she immediately notified Zhang Yi. Proudly smiling, Yang Xinxin revealed to Zhang Yi, "Brother Zhang Yi, that rookie who tried to invade our network has been located by me." She showed him a map in front of Zhang Yi, which he recognized at a glance as the Heavenly Sea City map, clearly marking their own location, and another flashing red dot likely indicating the invader's location. South close. It seems to be in the southwestern frontier of the West Mountain area, just over 30 kilometers from Lark Manor. However, Yang Xinxin coolly remarked, "Their technology is crude compared to mine, and their equipment isn't very advanced either. I easily breached their system with our supercomputer. The data on their computer is encrypted, though, so it will take some time to crack. But what's certain is that there is a huge organization in the West Mountain area of Heavenly Sea City. Given their proximity, conflict seems inevitable." Zhang Yi crossed his arms and took a deep breath. "What's meant to come will always come. I, Zhang Yi, don't seek trouble, but am not afraid of it either. If anyone dares to target me, no matter who they are, I'll make sure they pay dearly." Xinxin, continue to crack that information. The more intelligence we gather, the better. "I'm going to check on Karen," he said, heading to the mechanical workshop on the basement level. Upon calling over Lu Karen, who was busy at work, she greeted him with a bright smile, clearly grateful and dedicated to Zhang Yi's instructions. The workshop was noisy and swelteringly hot. She then turned and fetched something from a shelf. "Brother Zhang-Yi, look what I've got for you," she said, handing him a silencer for a sniper rifle. Zhang-Yi was thrilled. The silencer was crucial for him. His already enhanced firearms potency could theoretically allow him to snipe enemies from 300 meters away. The only issue had been the loud noise revealing his position, but now that problem was solved. With a thumbs up, Zhang-Yi praised, "Karen really knows me well." Flattered and blushing, Karen shyly replied, "Try it and see if it works well. I can adjust and modify it based on your feedback. Just tell me whatever you need in the future, and I'll do my best to make it for you." In the midst of the conversation, Zhang-Yi suddenly put his arm around Karen's shoulder, asking in a serious tone, "I came specifically for this, but can you make landmines, grenades, and the like?" Her heart raced with Zhang-Yi's warm hand on her shoulder. She looked at him hesitantly and a bit defiantly said, "Is that all you need? I'm an expert in mechanics. The technology in these things is less than that of a new energy battery. Aren't you underestimating me? I learned how to make those in primary school. They're child's play for me." Feeling a bit embarrassed, Zhang-Yi thought, even geniuses need recognition. Asking for something without challenge might be an insult to her. Karen saw the bewilderment on Zhang-Yi's face and quickly explained, "Those things are actually outdated. They are single combat equipment from hundreds of years ago, hardly useful now. Basically, they are just gunpowder. With the right materials, an average middle school student could make them." Zhang-Yi suddenly became serious. Times have changed. After the arrival of the extreme cold tide, modern high-tech weapons have become useless. Aircraft carriers and planes are almost scrap metal. Instead, these primitive thermal weapons will become very useful. I just went to Yan Xinshin's place. Our shelter has been targeted. Although we don't understand the opponent's background yet, it's likely a powerful armed organization. So, we have to prepare thoroughly in advance and set up tight traps around the shelter to be foolproof. Hearing this, Karen's expression also turned serious. She suddenly felt that these were not child's play and was filled with a sense of mission. Zhang-Yi smiled and stroked her hair. "But don't worry, just do as I say. I can handle everything else. With me here, I will protect you," he said, pinching Karen's cheek tenderly and affectionately. The naive Karen was overwhelmed by this and teared up instantly. Zhang-Yi continued, "Actually, I've always wanted to tell you. From the first time I saw you, I felt a special connection. You look so much like my sister, and you always give me the urge to protect you." Karen's eyes filled with tears as she sniffed and said excitedly, "Really?" Zhang-Yi gently smiled and replied, "Absolutely true. When have I ever lied?" But at this moment, Karen felt a twinge of disappointment, thinking, just a sister? Before she could ponder further, Zhang-Yi continued his affectionate gestures, softly caressing her cheek. "Just help your brother with his work. Leave everything else to me. As long as I'm here, I won't let you suffer a single bit of harm." Seeing Zhang-Yi's resolute gaze, Karen's heart fluttered. It was the first time she had been treated so intimately by a man, and she was momentarily lost for words, only managing to nod in agreement repeatedly. Zhang-Yi stood up, ready to leave. He said, "I won't disturb you any longer. Remember, rest when you're tired, drink more water when you're thirsty, and take good care of yourself. Don't overwork yourself." Then, Zhang-Yi left the studio, leaving behind his lingering presence in her dazed eyes. Once outside, Zhang-Yi took a deep breath, feeling he had once again stirred the emotions of an innocent girl. He thought to himself that with a girl as precious as her, using some benign tactics was necessary. Even leveraging his charm was acceptable when it came to securing dangerous items like weapons, which needed to be firmly in his hands. To heighten the vigilance of Chun-Lei and Uncle Yu, Zhang-Yi sent them a message urgently. "Recently, through the supercomputer, we've discovered some unknown forces. They might possess strong military capabilities and are only 30 kilometers away from me. You two must be very careful in your actions. The country has already collapsed, and anyone claiming to represent the state is 100% a scammer. Do not trust anyone." He also reminded them crucially, most importantly, never reveal your special abilities. Uncle Yu and Chun-Lei promptly responded with a sense of urgency, received, and showed concern for Zhang-Yi's safety as well. Zhang-Yi pondered, "It's still unclear how much information the other party has, so I dare not leave the shelter rashly. As long as I don't go out, no matter how powerful they are, they can't do anything to me." But then, considering Chun-Lei's position across the river, he realized that if the force from the West Hills truly coveted his shelter, Su Family Town would be right on their path. With this in mind, he quickly sent a private message to Chun-Lei. "If your village encounters danger you can't handle, remember to run in my direction." In this ice-cold apocalypse, Zhang-Yi knew the value of an ice ability user and the importance of keeping such a loyal and capable ally safe. Meanwhile, Chun-Lei, reading the warning from Zhang-Yi, seemed somewhat unconcerned. He mumbled to himself, "Brother Zhang is really something. Right across is the big villa area. How could they possibly be interested in my poor village?" Meanwhile, about 30 kilometers west of Su Family Town, once a development zone with many buildings under construction, a tall and robust man stepped out of a building, complaining, "Why won't this snow stop? If it continues like this, the entire earth will be covered." Beside him, Xia Huanhuan smiled faintly and responded, "Lu Ziang, stop worrying unnecessarily. We need to focus on completing our mission. Besides, after 2 months of heavy snow, the moisture in the air has almost condensed and consumed. The snow should stop soon. Xia Huanhuan caught a snowflake in her hand. It's said that even the equatorial regions in Africa are now dozens of degrees below zero. From now on, it will only get colder, and snowfall will become increasingly rare. Fortunately, the heavy snow will soon stop. This is probably the creator's last mercy on the world. Lu Xiang, not quite appreciating the poetic sentiment, directly sat on a snow sled. In contrast, Xia Huanhuan mounted a large dog, her petite figure posing no burden to the animal. She took out a device from her pocket, reported the completion of a task from a few days ago, and received new instructions. We were initially limited to the West Mountain area, but according to new orders, we need to make a special search in another place. Although the target isn't specifically mentioned, Xia Huanhuan pondered for a moment. It's probably not a particularly important task. We'll just go through the motions, and then return to base. After a long journey, Xia Huanhuan suddenly stood up and looked into the distance towards Lark Manor, where Zhang Yi resided. That should be our destination. She then settled herself on the sled. Let's be alert. After searching here, we can finish up. At Xia Huanhuan's whistle, 4 large sled dogs rushed towards their destination. Their initial destination was Zhang Yi's Lark Manor, but the sight of the snow village, especially the enormous ice castle at its center, took Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang by surprise. After the heavy snowfall, Chun Lei, using his ice abilities, had helped the villagers construct ice dwellings, particularly his anime-inspired castle in the middle of the village. The arrival of Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang alerted the village's sled dogs, whose barking quickly attracted a large group of villagers. Since the battle at Lark Manor, the villagers had been on edge, and any slight commotion brought them out in force, armed and ready. Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang were once again astounded. It's incredible to see so many survivors in this extreme cold apocalypse. A leading villager, armed with a homemade firearm, confronted them with 3 critical questions. Who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing here? Xia Huanhuan stepped forward with a slight smile and said, "We are from a government organization, dispatched to search for survivors of the snow disaster. Please don't be too nervous." As she spoke, she took out her own credential. She was well aware that these survivors still harbored some hope in the government, and therefore, they had already prepared so-called credentials in advance. The acting village head, Su Dongtang, examined the credentials and, impressed by their uniform and demeanor, decided to trust them. He quickly turned hospitable. "So you are officials. Would you like to come into the village for a visit?" He signaled the villagers to prepare food and drink and instructed them to donate some of their stored food to treat these 2 officials properly. However, some villagers were skeptical. "These 2 are of unknown origin. Is it necessary to treat them this way?" Su Dongtang, with a hint of depth in his words, reassured them, "All I need to know is who they represent, not who they are." In these chaotic times, Su East Village has barely survived. If we can establish a connection with influential people, it might be the making of the Su family. Besides, we're only offering some food. They won't eat much. The villagers, understanding the strategy, brought out their best hidden treasures to treat the guests. Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang were taken aback by the lively and well-organized community, seemingly unaffected by the heavy snow and apparently well-supplied. They inquired of village head Su Dongtang, "Your village is so well-managed. How did you achieve this? I'm curious." Upon hearing the query, Su Dongtang puffed out his chest, ready to impress the so-called officials. "Firstly, it's the indomitable spirit of self-reliance and resilience of our Su family. A mere snow disaster can't defeat us. Of course, as the village head, I've played a significant role. I always remind the villagers to have foresight and be prepared. Hence, most of us haven't worried about food." Su Dongtang boasted proudly, "I don't mean to brag, but no one has starved to death in our village since the snow disaster." Some of the village elders nearby were speechless at his claim, thinking to themselves, this Su Dongtang really doesn't shy away from claiming credit. He's been village head for less than a week. How did all the achievements suddenly become his? It was all under the command of the old village head, and has nothing to do with Su Dongtang. Xia Huanhuan casually asked, "So, your village has accumulated a lot of food?" Su Dongtang, more self-assured now, replied, "Little sister, you seem not very familiar with the agricultural market of Heavenly Sea City. Let me tell you, in the past, 1/3 of the vegetables in Heavenly Sea City were supplied by our Su family town." Just as he was about to boast further, he caught himself, realizing he shouldn't so easily reveal the village's food reserves. He might inadvertently invite trouble if the authorities decided to claim them. Quickly shifting his tone, Su Dongtang said evasively, "It's been snowing for over a month, and most of the grain and vegetables are nearly spoiled. The villagers are basically struggling to make ends meet." Xia Huanhuan, not easily fooled, commented, "For a village as large as Su family town, probably housing hundreds of families, maintaining subsistence is impressive." Su Dongtang, swelling with pride, continued, "Actually, it's mainly our Su East village that's managed well. Look at the ice houses we've built. I directed everyone to construct them, perfectly solving our housing problem. Other villages' houses have been buried under the snow. Their village heads didn't have the foresight like me, resulting in many freezing to death." The other villagers watched Su Dongtang's performance, speechless speechless from disbelief, yet due to his status as the village head, they refrained from pointing out the absurdity. Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang were incredulous, secretly marveling. I never thought this old man would be so prescient, Lu Xiang remarked as he looked out at the ice castle outside the window. It's incredible that such a structure could be built in this icy apocalypse. Your village's craftsmen must be really skilled. Su Dongtang started to get carried away. We have many skilled workers in the village. This little skill is nothing to us. However, Su Dongtang's blatant self-promotion inadvertently led to the deliberate overlooking of Chunlei's presence. In order to entertain the so-called leaders, the villagers lined up to bring out long-treasured delicacies from their homes. They had been eating compressed food for weeks and now couldn't help but marvel at the feast before them, thinking how wealthy the village must be. At this moment, Su Dongtang approached with a sycophantic smile to pour wine, offering his many years treasured drink. Do the two leaders have any insider news? When does the government plan to address the snow disaster? Are there any disaster relief materials being distributed? The two continued to eat and drink silently until Xia Huanhuan said indifferently, we've already made plans for the disaster relief. It should be implemented soon. Hearing this, Su Dongtang and the villagers looked forward with hope. That's wonderful news. These days are too hard to endure. If this continues, our whole village will either freeze or starve to death. Has any expert analyzed when this snow disaster will end? Xia Huanhuan continued nonchalantly. It should be soon. Haven't you noticed the snow has lessened a lot recently? The experts say it will stop soon. Lu Xiang couldn't help but glance at Xia Huanhuan, thinking, with her calm and steady demeanor, if I didn't know some inside information, even I would believe her. Suddenly, Xia Huanhuan asked, after the snow disaster, did anyone in your village experience any strange changes? Su Dongtang and the villagers were momentarily stunned, all aware she was referring to Chunlei. Fortunately, Su Dongtang wasn't too foolish and responded with a forced laugh. Everything is normal in our village. Strange changes? We've never heard of such things. Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang's mission was to seek resources, but more importantly, to find mutants and bring them back to the base. The villagers' changing expressions did not escape the observant Xia Huanhuan. She put down her wine glass and said indifferently, after the snow disaster, some individuals have undergone mutations and acquired extraordinary abilities. The government highly values these individuals. If you can provide useful information, the organization will reward you generously. The villagers hesitated, not daring to speak in front of the village head, Su Dongtang. He was internally debating whether to disclose Chunlei's situation, considering he hadn't yet received any tangible benefits. Curious, Su Dongtang asked, may I inquire what the organization plans to do with these individuals? Xia Huanhuan's certainty of mutants in the village strengthened. She replied warmly, these powerful mutants will become the backbone of our organization, crucial for rebuilding our community in the future. If you provide useful information, the organization will acknowledge your contribution significantly. Su Dongtang pondered, cynically thinking that promises were easier said than done. He thought to himself, Chunlei is the village's treasure. Without him, our village would have been doomed after the snow disaster. I can't just hand him over so easily. He then took out his phone. Give me your contact details. If we discover anything unusual, I will report to the leaders immediately. Just then, Xia Huanhuan's expression suddenly changed. She stared intently at Su Dongtang with a smile that wasn't quite a smile and said, Village Chief Su, is there something you're not telling us? The sudden change in Xia Huanhuan's demeanor scared Su Dongtang, and the atmosphere turned incredibly tense. Su Dongtang's hand froze midair as he stuttered. We are all law-abiding citizens here. I assure you there's no falsehood in our words. Xia Huanhuan imposingly tapped the table and pressed, are you sure there are no mutants in your village? Think carefully before you answer. The organization is taking this matter very seriously. If you dare to hide any information, I guarantee you won't get away with it. Realizing his lie was caught, Su Dongtang looked embarrassed, but quickly thought of a way out and whispered to Xia Huanhuan, actually, we do know of a strange person, but he's not from our Su East village, so I didn't dare to mention it carelessly. The fellow's name is Zhang Yi, and he lives in Lark Manor across from our village. Upon hearing this, Xia Huanhuan's eyes lit up. The name matched the target mentioned in her special mission. Overjoyed by the coincidence, she thought, this is a perfect opportunity to gather more information. To cover his verbal slip-up, Su Dongtang divulged everything he knew, that Zhang Yi is like a merciless devil. His home is surrounded by traps. A few days ago, we just wanted to borrow some resources from him, and without a word, he killed hundreds of our people. The villagers, fueled by indignation, chimed in one after another. That devil is definitely not normal. His methods are extremely cruel. Observing the villagers' unrestrained anger, Xia Huanhuan thought, this doesn't seem like an act. My final task is to find Zhang Yi, and then I can return to the base for a comfortable life. Eager for any information about Zhang Yi, she inquired, but surprisingly, the whole Su family town knew virtually nothing about him. They couldn't provide age, height, or appearance details because the battle against him was at night. That night, Zhang Yi, like a ghostly sniper, was elusive, and nobody got a clear look at him. They were too busy fleeing in terror. Lu Xiang added urgently, but you must know something about his abilities, right? Su Dongtang helplessly replied, we don't understand these abilities or mutations. We just think that his capabilities are beyond a normal person. His home is surrounded by traps, and he has a snowmobile and a sniper rifle. But as for these matters, you'll need to investigate yourselves. We are just honest, simple farmers." Hearing this, Xia Huanhuan's eyes flickered with disappointment. Understanding a mutant's abilities is key to dealing with them, and without this information, her excitement was premature. Seeing no valuable information was forthcoming, Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang finished their meal and prepared to leave. Su Dongtang, ever obsequious, escorted them to the village entrance. "Leaders, don't forget about Su Family Town when distributing any good policies in the future." Xia Huanhuan promised with a smile. "With such good management of your village, I will definitely report to my superiors. You won't lack rewards after the disaster." Overjoyed, Su Dongtang generously handed them more of his treasured wine. Once out of the village, Xia Huanhuan quickly pulled out her device to report to the base about Su Family Town. Discovered a large village, Su Family Town, with an approximate survivor count of 2,000. It is estimated to have a considerable stockpile of food. No traces of mutants detected. Lu Xiang, puzzled, asked, "Why mislead them with false promises of reconstruction and relief plans? Isn't that all nonsense?" Disdain, Xia Huanhuan looked at Lu Xiang and said, "If I didn't deceive them, do you think they would have treated us so well? Without a little intimidation, would they have provided us with accurate information?" Lu Xiang, somewhat naively, scratched his head and chuckled. "But those villagers seemed so simple and honest. Isn't it too cruel to deceive them like this?" Xia Huanhuan replied with a meaningful tone, "This is why you're just my subordinate. I tell them what they want to hear. As long as they are grateful to me, I don't care about the rest." Lu Xiang, still not convinced, added, "What if they find out everything you said was a lie? What will you do then?" Xia Huanhuan confidently responded, "To them, we represent the government. Whatever we say is taken as legitimate. When that time comes, I'll have a new script ready." Now, knowing their target was in Lark Manor across the river, Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang prepared to meet this Zhang Yi. Lu Xiang pulled out his binoculars, observing Lark Manor carefully. "Our trip to Su East Village wasn't fruitless. At least we know his home is surrounded by traps." Xia Huanhuan couldn't help but admire. To live in such a luxurious villa during the apocalypse is indeed enviable. Lu Xiang scoffed, "What's there to envy in this godforsaken weather? It's freezing outside. With such a big villa, he can't possibly have enough fuel to keep warm. The temperature inside won't be much better, not to mention the daily necessities. Our base is much more comfortable." Xia Huanhuan thought disdainfully, if the mastermind behind emptying the southern warehouse is truly Zhang Yi, then whether he has enough supplies or not is really uncertain. Xia Huanhuan said to Lu Xiang, "Take me over there." She agilely jumped onto his shoulders. Subsequently, Lu Xiang made a sudden leap. They both landed steadily on the wall of the shelter. Once inside the compound, Xia Huanhuan couldn't help but admire. This shelter, built by the wealthy Wang Siming, is not only luxurious in appearance but nearly impregnable, comparable to a military fortress. "But unfortunately for you, there is no fortress I can't breach in this world." Lu Xiang, concerned, suggested, "Shouldn't we try to negotiate first? It might be dangerous to barge in like this, especially since your ability isn't combat-oriented." Xia Huanhuan was slightly irritated. "Are you teaching me how to do my job? Don't forget, even without mutant abilities, I'm still a special forces soldier." Lu Xiang didn't argue further, just cautioned her to be careful and to signal him if there was trouble. Confidently, Xia Huanhuan assured him, "Don't worry, Zhang Yi would never expect someone to invade in this manner." She then slipped through the wall and found herself in the shelter's living room. The warmth of the shelter enveloped her immediately, and she was astonished. This place is even warmer than the West Mountain base. Looking at all the lavish furnishings and appliances, living here is even better than a fairy tale. Xia Huanhuan was now certain that Zhang Yi must possess a wealth of resources, whether food or energy. As she was about to continue exploring, a sudden cat's cry startled her. Considering everything inside was unknown and recognizing the shelter's significance, she decided it was wiser to return and report back. However, unwilling to leave without making her presence known, she placed a military knife on the table as a warning to Zhang Yi, then phased through the walls to leave the shelter. Seeing Xia Huanhuan return safely, Lu Xiang immediately asked, "What's the situation inside?" Xia Huanhuan, with excitement in her eyes, replied, "There's a significant discovery. We need to report back to the base immediately. I'll explain on the way." Lu Xiang, surprised by their abrupt retreat, questioned, "We've taken down powerful factions before with ease. Why retreat now? It's not like you to back down." Xia Huanhuan, "Is Zhang Yi that formidable?" After some thought, Xia Huanhuan explained, "Judging by the situation inside, my instinct tells me we are no match for him. Besides, I'm not particularly skilled in combat. This is the last mission, and it's prudent to ask for reinforcements from the base rather than take unnecessary risks." Accepting the command, Lu Xiang didn't question further and prepared for their departure. Meanwhile, the noise had awoken Zhang Yi. Opening his eyes, he saw Flower, the cat, on high alert. Its fur bristled as it meowed at the door. Recognizing the cat's unusual agitation, Zhang Yi, with his instincts kicking in, drew his pistol and soothingly asked, What's happened? Do you hear something outside? Although Flower understood human speech, it couldn't communicate back, just anxiously meowed and looked around. Zhang Yi checked his phone for any surveillance, but found nothing unusual. However, Flower seemed eager to go outside. Once the door was opened, Flower jumped onto the bar and directed Zhang Yi's attention to the military knife. Picking up the knife, Zhang Yi examined it, realizing this is military grade. It's not from my collection, and unlikely anyone else here would have such an item. Zhang Yi's pupils dilated in shock, a chill running down his spine. How could someone have placed this here? And more terrifyingly, how did they bypass the shelter's defenses so silently? As these thoughts raced through his mind, he quickly opened the surveillance footage, replaying the past 10 minutes. The scene that unfolded left him dumbfounded. A woman had casually walked through the living room, seemingly emerging from the wall itself. Zhang Yi was astounded. Such an ability was beyond his comprehension, especially in a world increasingly filled with incredible and inexplicable phenomena since the emergence of mutants. He realized the gravity of the threat. This woman must be eliminated. As long as she lives, I won't be able to sleep peacefully. Turning to Flower, Zhang Yi said, "You're coming with me. We're going to eliminate that intruder." He then armed himself fully, checking the external surveillance and spotting Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang preparing to leave. Just two people. I must eliminate them, especially the woman. Her leaving that knife was a declaration of war, and I can't afford to be lenient. Meanwhile, Xia Huanhuan and Lu Xiang were quickly making their way back on a snow sled, with Xia Huanhuan visibly elated. This reconnaissance mission has been extremely fruitful. Not only did we find a populous and resource-rich village, but we also uncovered secrets about Zhang Yi. Reporting this to the higher-ups will surely be a significant achievement. Curious, Lu Xiang asked, "What exactly did you find inside?" "You've been smiling ever since we left the villa." Xia Huanhuan's excitement was palpable. She turned to Lu Xiang and said, "Old Lu, you're just a regular soldier in the team, and there are some things you aren't cleared to know. I'm in a good mood today, so I'll let you in on some secrets. This Zhang Yi is likely connected to the theft from the southern warehouse of Walmart before the snow disaster." This news was a hot topic right before the snow disaster, and even Lu Xiang, still in the military then, was aware of it. "Isn't that the brand with thousands of supermarkets, and the southern warehouse stored nearly half of their goods?" Xia Huanhuan continued. "The estimated value of those goods exceeds 10 billion, enough to sustain a city for over a decade." Lu Xiang, initially without much concept of the enormity, was now genuinely startled. "Are you saying that Zhang Yi knows the inside story of this theft?" Lu Xiang asked. Xia Huanhuan smiled cryptically. "The higher-ups at the base seem to think so. They just sent us to investigate Zhang Yi, hoping to track the stolen goods. But when I entered his house, I realized the situation was far more complicated. His living standards are exceptionally high, even more luxurious than the base leader's #1 life pod. Without substantial resources, who would dare live so extravagantly in these apocalyptic times? This makes me think that we were wrong in our initial approach. Consider it. How could an ordinary person survive so long in the apocalypse, fend off thousands of villagers single-handedly, and kill hundreds? Zhang Yi is likely a powerful mutant, and when you connect this to the warehouse theft, which is an extraordinary event, it all starts to make sense." Lu Xiang was astounded. "So you mean he has some ability to conceal resources, and might have emptied the warehouse?" Xia Huanhuan responded gravely. "These are just my personal speculations, but the likelihood is very high. Even if there's just a 1 in 10,000 chance, it's worth the base taking action. Once I report back, even a quarter of Team A's force should be enough to destroy any resistance. No matter how fortified his house is, all defenses are virtually useless against me." Indeed, Xia Huanhuan's ability held infinite potential, especially in siege warfare where throwing in explosives or poison gas could quickly determine the outcome. Lu Xiang looked at the confident Xia Huanhuan, his eyes filled with admiration. "You naturally mutated people are just so lucky, not like me." Watching a disheartened Lu Xiang, Xia Huanhuan quickly comforted him. "Old Lu, don't be too downhearted. Once I make some achievements and get promoted to a high position at the base, I will certainly not forget about you." Lu Xiang gave a simple smile. "Then I'll be counting on Sister Huan's support in the future." At that moment, Lu Xiang noticed Xia Huanhuan's head suddenly tilt, and a stream of blood sprayed out from her temple. The smile still remained on her face as she collapsed lifelessly on the sled. Zhang Yi, mounted on the demon cat Flower, held a sniper rifle. With the aid of his supernatural ability, he sniped the wall-passing woman in one shot. Watching his old partner and leader die in front of him, Lu Xiang instinctively drew his pistol, but he couldn't locate Zhang Yi. As he hesitated, Zhang Yi had already reloaded, ready to take down the robust man with one shot. But as the shot fired, the man disappeared from the sled like a ghost, taking Xia Huanhuan's body with him. Zhang Yi felt a chill on his scalp. This guy is also a mutant. Two mutants attacking at the same time. The opposing force must be huge. No matter what, I can't let him take back any information about me. Zhang Yi jumped off Flower's back, wondering, what now? It seems too late to contact Chun Lei. Then he thought of Flower. "You go force that person out. I'll support you with the sniper here. When we get back, I'll reward you with 100 dried fish." At that moment, Lu Xiang also guessed that the sharpshooter was Zhang Yi. He must have followed us to silence us. With that thought, Lu Xiang Ziang quickly took out his device and sent a distress signal to the base. Just then, Lu Ziang heard a thunderous roar, and what he saw next made his pupils constrict in fear. What was this thing? Flower had transformed into a gigantic steel-spiked ball, rolling ferociously towards Lu Ziang, carving a deep trench in its path. Before Lu Ziang could catch his breath, Flower, who had halted momentarily, turned around and lunged at him fiercely. Lu Ziang pulled out an AK from his pants and began firing. However, ordinary bullets seemed to do no harm to Flower. From a distance, Zhang Yi, with his sniper rifle ready, took shots whenever he saw an opportunity. But Lu Ziang, with his peculiarly agile movements, narrowly dodged the bullets each time. Zhang Yi guessed this guy's ability must be related to speed and agility. Despite the situation, Zhang Yi wasn't worried. As a feline, Flower had top-tier agility and speed, along with unmatched stamina. Lu Ziang was forced to face the combined assault of Zhang Yi and Flower. He had to dodge bullets from afar and evade the huge beast up close. Using his abilities also consumed a significant amount of his stamina. Soon, he began to falter, and with the power-enhanced bullet's lethality and precision, Lu Ziang barely dodged a bullet only to be immediately pounced on by Flower, who bit down on his shoulder. As he faced death, Lu Ziang swung his fist at Flower's eye, attempting to take him down with him, but Zhang Yi swiftly fired another shot, hitting him right in the forehead. After both mutants had fallen, Zhang Yi casually walked over. Suddenly, Flower howled at the bodies on the ground. Zhang Yi looked closely and saw the woman they called the Wallpasser, her body surrounded by a golden glow. As Zhang Yi reached out to touch it, he was overwhelmed by an indescribable sensation that rushed to his brain, as if some instinct had awakened. It seemed like he had absorbed the woman's power. Realizing that mutants' powers could be consumed by one another, Zhang Yi excitedly hugged Flower, showering him with kisses, despite Flower's look of disdain. After absorbing Xia Huanwan's power, Zhang Yi, somewhat puzzled, looked at Lu Ziang's body. Isn't this guy also a mutant? Why didn't I feel any energy shift when I touched him? He collected the bodies into a different space and cleaned up the bloodstains at the scene, contemplating, this world is becoming increasingly incomprehensible. Every step is fraught with danger. My life is destined to be a precarious journey. Can I make it to the other side? After dealing with two mutants, Zhang Yi hurried back home. It turned out that Zhou Kir and 3 others were also awakened by Flower's calls. Realizing Zhang Yi and Flower had left, the 4 anxiously waited in the living room. Upon seeing Zhang Yi return, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, Zhang Yi started to assign tasks. I just killed 2 mutants with Flower. It's very likely that we will face retaliation from a powerful force, so we need to make thorough preparations. After a brief arrangement, Zhang Yi went straight to sleep until noon the next day. As soon as he walked into the living room, Yang Xinxin informed him of a significant discovery. Based on the analysis of the devices on those 2 people you brought back last night, I found out that they come from an organization called West Mountain Base. This organization is vast, with thousands of survivors, a strict hierarchical structure, and a powerful armed force, including a group of elite aces, seemingly comprised of special forces and people with supernatural abilities. This wasn't far from what Zhang Yi had expected, but he was still quite shocked by Yang Xinxin's briefing. Ordinary soldiers are not a big threat to us. As long as there isn't a second woman who can phase through walls, my shelter can withstand ordinary weapons. As long as I don't go outside, no one can do anything to me. Finally, a smile appeared on Zhang Yi's face. He had always imagined those unknown forces to be too powerful. Now, having Yang Xinxin gather intelligence was really great. He patted Yang Xinxin on the head. Yang Xinxin, you are truly amazing. Yang Xinxin wore a proud face. This is nothing. Just give me a little more time, and I will soon be able to hack into the entire network of West Mountain Base. At this moment, Zhou Kir came into the living room. Brother Zhang Yi, come with me to the lab. There's a significant discovery. After seeing Zhang Yi praising Yang Xinxin, she was eager to show off her research achievement that she had been working on all night. The 2 arrived next to a microscope. Zhou Kir explained, I found that the cell activity of these 2 people is 10 times that of ordinary people from the body slices. Moreover, the way their glycogen reacts to release energy is also unusual, especially in the brain cells. Therefore, I deduced that the source of the supernatural abilities is likely from the brain. At this moment, Zhang Yi also had a sudden realization and casually praised, no wonder I felt such a strong impact in my brain when I was devouring the phasing woman last night. This discovery is quite interesting. Zhou Kir became a bit angry. This significant discovery that I've worked so hard on only earns such a perfunctory praise? You have no idea how important this is. Zhou Kir seriously added, up until now, it seems that the mutations in humans are influenced by gamma rays, but the probability is extremely low, and many mutations are negative. However, if someone could understand the principles of these mutants' mutations, then through cell transplantation or some other means, it might be possible to transform normal people into mutants. This statement piqued Zhang Yi's interest. Are you saying that in the future, the world will be full of mutants? Zhou Kir held up Lu Ziang's slice. This person is likely a man-made mutant, as he only has localized cell mutations, completely different from the natural cell mutations of the woman. His body is filled with a lot of malignant cells. It seems to be a defective product. Hearing this, Zhang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. So it's a man-made thing. No wonder it only enhanced speed and agility. Uncle Yu and that Liang Yu could totally outmatch him. In that case, the so-called elite squad of West Mountain Base is probably made up of these defective products. That makes them much easier to deal with. Then, Zhang Yi went to Lu Karen's workshop, where he had her list the materials needed to make explosives. After reviewing the list, he nodded. Finding these items shouldn't be difficult. Afterwards, Zhang Yi went to the underground training ground. He was eager to know the extent to which his abilities had improved after absorbing the phasing woman's power. Zhang Yi drew his compound bow to full draw. With a whoosh, the arrow, now carrying supernatural abilities, seemed faster, sharper, and more formidable. It hit the bullseye and shattered the target. What surprised Zhang Yi even more was that the sound of the target breaking only reached his ears after the fact, indicating his arrow's speed had surpassed the speed of sound. Astonished by such a significant enhancement, he looked at his powerful hands and murmured to himself, I never thought that simply plunging the power from one mutant could increase my ability faster than months of strenuous training. After Lu Xiang successfully sent out a distress signal, West Mountain Base immediately went into an emergency state. The information department notified his direct team leader, Ling Feng, as soon as possible. It was the first time the base had received a distress signal since its operation. We have confirmed the direction of the signal, but we can't act rashly. We must get approval from Mr. Chen first. Determined to save his subordinates, Ling Feng rushed to the first life capsule to seek guidance from Chen Xinyan. Many of their comrades had died in the snowstorms and in the experiments conducted on the modified humans after the apocalypse, making each special forces member as close as siblings. But as soon as he arrived at Chen Xinyan's residence, the secretary Garo stopped him. Team leader Ling, Mr. Chen is already resting. Please wait till tomorrow morning for any matters. Ling Feng was visibly anxious. My two subordinates encountered danger while on a mission and have sent a distress signal to the base. It's urgent. I must see Mr. Chen immediately to ask for support. Garo smiled faintly. I understand your feelings at this moment, but we cannot disturb Mr. Chen's rest. At this, Ling Feng grew angry. My team members must be in mortal danger, or they wouldn't have sent a distress signal. Any further delay and they might die. However, Garo remained composed with a smile. You should trust the abilities of your teammates. They are all excellent Special Forces members with good combat training. They can take care of themselves. The Special Forces members present were visibly furious, almost wanting to punch her for her smile. But Garo maintained her composure, her tone authoritative. If Mr. Chen doesn't rest well, it will affect the security of the entire base. Here at West Mountain Base, the leader is above everything. Ling Feng persisted. Human life is at stake. Can't you make an exception and notify him? They are valuable talents of the base. Garo bowed slightly. I am just following the leader's orders. There is nothing I can do. Ling Feng reluctantly had to return, as they were all originally soldiers and obeying orders was their duty. Garo watched them leave, her smile fading as soon as they were out of sight, continuing her vigil in front of Chen Xinyan's residence. However, just a wall away, Chen Xinyan was busily indulged in admiration from two girls who clung to her, adoringly commenting, it must be hard managing so much every day. Chen Xinyan enjoyed the adulation, posing as a leader burdened with the worries of her people and the base. It's my duty to govern in my position. For the future of the thousands of people in West Mountain Base, a little hardship is nothing. After the session ended, Chen Xinyan called Garo in, inquiring about the noise outside. Was someone looking for me just now? Garo informed her it was Ling Feng, whose subordinates had sent a distress signal to the base. Chen Xinyan waved it off. Just two Special Forces members, and they are asking for help. Did they encounter an enemy they couldn't even escape from? But to appease Ling Feng, who is a useful asset, allow them to send a team for reconnaissance, but do not deploy any team leader level forces. Meanwhile, in the Special Forces meeting room, Ling Feng had already called together 7 team leader level figures, and Liang Yu, who had recently joined. Garo entered. I woke Mr. Chen specially for you. He agrees to send a team for reconnaissance, but no team leader level personnel. Eager and with no time to waste, Ling Feng had to be content with sending a few soldiers to scope out the situation. After the meeting dispersed, as they were heading back to the living quarters, Liang Yu spotted 2 familiar faces, Meng Zishuan. Liang Yu instinctively called out to them. Meng Zishuan, seeing it was Liang Yu, beamed with joy. Teacher Liang, it's so great to see you again. Liang Yu, however, was surprised. How did you end up in the second life capsule? Meng Zishuan smirked. We have our own skills. As long as we serve Mr. Chen well, we can live in the second life capsule just like you. Otherwise, we would end up like the other classmates you left behind written off. Liang Yu was confused. Written off? What are you talking about? Meng Zishuan wanted to say more, but was stopped by Shen Moling, who was beside her, advising, you'd better say less to avoid unnecessary trouble. Liang Yu wanted to continue asking questions, but Meng Zishuan indicated, I have nothing to tell you. If you want to know what exactly happened, it's best you investigate it yourself. Anyway, we only know that ever since you abandoned us, many classmates have been taken away one after another, but not a single one has returned. We don't know the specific reasons. You are now part of the second second life pod, so don't worry about those civilians from the fourth life pod. It's best if you act as if nothing happened. After saying this, she quickly turned and left, as if afraid of being implicated. Liang Yu was completely blank. She had worked so hard to protect his students, so why did they mysteriously disappear at West Mountain Base? Could it be that they were assigned to new positions, and just no one else knows? She wondered. Deciding to investigate this matter thoroughly, Liang Yu was suddenly approached by a familiar, deep voice. If you want to know where the missing classmates went, you can come with me. It was the class monitor, Wu Qingyu. Following Wu Qingyu to a corridor, he whispered, recently, due to some special work, I occasionally get called to the second life pod. Once, I accidentally saw two people in protective suits carrying a long bag through here. That bag very likely contained one of the missing students. Determined to find out the truth, Liang Yu told Wu Qingyu to go back to the dorm first while she secretly followed the individuals. Seizing the moment when someone was changing clothes, she knocked out the staff member who was donning a protective suit, and then quickly put on the protective suit herself. After blending in with the workers and heading towards the morgue, the leader laughed and said, this is the 8th failure recently. It seems their bodies are still hard to adapt. Liang Yu was full of confusion and fear. Adapt? Adapt to what? As she watched, the two placed the body into an instrument chamber and operated the console. Soon, a fierce incineration noise emanated from the machine, and shortly after, a white, viscous fluid slowly flowed out of a pipe in the machine. Liang Yu felt nauseous. Isn't this the same thing we ate on the first day? They're actually making food out of corpses for the people in the fourth life pod. Then she overheard one person saying playfully, looks like we're out of banana flavoring. Let's give them mango flavor today. Holding up a cup of white liquid, he remarked, this stuff is rich in protein and nutritious. If you don't know what it's made of, it's actually quite effective for replenishing energy. Today, let's make it taste better for them, so they can eat well and have the energy to keep pedaling bicycles. After discovering the secret of the white liquid, Liang Yu couldn't help but rush into the bathroom and vomit violently. She confirmed in her heart, those missing students must have been silently disposed of in the same manner. I thought they would be able to fend for themselves in the base, living a hard but secure life. But now it seems this place is nothing but a den of horrors. Had I known this would be the outcome, I would have preferred staying at Azure Sky Academy. Filled with despair, Liang Yu resolved, I can't stay here any longer. I must find a way to take the children and leave. But she felt utterly powerless to do anything at the moment. Meanwhile, under Ling Feng's direction, West Mountain Base dispatched a 30-man special operations squad. Though the traces at the scene had been almost completely cleared by Zhang Yi, some tracks of a snow-filled cross-country vehicle were discovered. Following the marks, the team quickly found Zhang Yi's shelter. On Commander Shinhang's order, the team formed up in a tactical arrangement and followed Zhang Yi's footprints cautiously. Suddenly, one of the soldiers felt a slight resistance against his leg. Before he could react, a massive explosion erupted, and Shinhang could only shout his teammate's name as the soldier was blown into unrecognizable pieces. In the post-apocalyptic world, all comrades were like brothers, and witnessing a brother's death right before his eyes filled Shinhang with rage. He immediately ordered his troops to fire at Zhang Yi's shelter, but their bullets left no marks on the walls, as if they were firing toy bullets, not even leaving a scratch on the glass. The commotion outside alerted Zhang Yi, who quickly ascended from the basement. Realizing that West Mountain Base had sent people, he immediately activated the artificial intelligence and turned on the optical protection device. As the voice command ended, a protective shield instantly enveloped the entire shelter. From the inside, Zhang Yi could see out, but from the outside, nothing inside could be seen. Observing the fully armed team outside, Zhang Yi muttered, finally, a worthy opponent has appeared. This is a billion-dollar shelter designed to withstand professional military forces. It would be a waste not to use it against such adversaries.